Welcome to Catch the NeoPixel Lesson 4. This is the final video in this series of this game, Catch the NeoPixel. So the last thing we have to cover is the losing scenario. Again, there has to be a reason to lose in order for a game to be fun. Again, if there is no challenge, there's no reason to play. We're also going to discuss some possible enhancements if you want to kind of continue the game on your own later on. So let's get to it. So if you've been following the video series, again, we've been doing a lot here. We've created a couple of variables to represent, our inputs of left and right button. We've created a couple of variables to represent the hero and the enemy, as well as the enemy's health. We created another variable more for just internal purposes of, producing something cool in terms of the winning scenario. So now the question is, how can we lose? So let's use the notion of time. We have to capture the enemy enough times within a certain time frame. If we fail to do that, then we lose. So similar to the enemy having some kind of a variable to help us win, we need another variable to help us lose. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to create a variable t to represent time, and we're going to start it off at 0. And what's going to happen with t is that it's going to increase as we go. So I'm going to put this right here, and let's do a t++. And let's explore what's happening with t. Again, we're not doing anything special with t. Right now, t is simply increasing by 1, and we're going to print it out. Pull up the serial monitor. So you can see here the value of t is increasing. Now let's think about the rate at which the values are increasing. So we have a delay of 100. Now remember, this is 100 milliseconds, which means it's delaying for a tenth of a second, which means that ideally every second t should be increasing by 10. All right, so again, if you kind of sat there and timed it, you'll probably see that it's really close, that t is increasing 10 every second, okay, because there's a delay of a tenth of a second. All right, so now the question is, now that we have this notion of time, we can have our decision. And I'm going to do it right here. So we're going to say if t, oops, wrong parenthesis. If t is equal to, let's say 5 seconds. So what is 5 seconds? If you recall, we said that t is increasing 10 every second because this is running at a tenth of a second. That means that 5 seconds would be 50. All right. So again, this number depends on your delay. So you may have to do a little math if you've chosen a different delay for your game. If you want your game to run a little faster. But just realize, just ask yourself, depending on the delay, how much will t increase in 1 second? All right, so now that we have that, that's essentially it. So this is our losing condition. So what are we going to do when we lose? I don't think I'm going to use the same thing as the color wheel. Let's just color everything red. And again, as I mentioned in the previous video, if anybody has some prior programming knowledge and you're thinking, why is he not using a for loop? You're right, I would use a for loop. But in this particular video series, it's been introduced prior to discussing loops in class. So I will go the long route. And I'm taking advantage of the fact that the color wheel is already here instead of using the RGB version. But just for comparison, I could have done this as well if you're more familiar with this version. All right, let's give it a try. Actually, and let me do this. Let me not say equal. Let's say greater than or equal to 50. So let's pull up the serial monitor as well as the camera. So at this point, I'm going to sit back. Let's sit back and watch. And there we go. We just lost the game. So I would say 5 seconds might be too much. So let's make this 10 seconds. And let's try that again. And at this point, I'm actually going to try to play the game. All right, just to see the real. So, you know, a little bit of quality control. You got to have your beta testers test your program. So here you're playing. Oh, I lost. So the other thing that you can do here too is you can, you know, throw a play tone. And, you know, matter of fact, let me pull the camera up. This would be a good segue into the last part of this video, which is, you know, what are some possible enhancements for the game? And I'm going to comment this out, reload it again. Okay, so, you know, some things that you can also do with this, I think it might be interesting that, you know, if you kind of think of Pac-Man, you know, at some point the ghost did become powerful and they started chasing Pac-Man. So perhaps you could do something similar to that where maybe at some random point in time, the enemy becomes green, like the Hulk. And then it starts to chase us around, and our job is not necessarily to, you know, capture the enemy, but then to move away from the enemy as the enemy's moving. So that would be a cool enhancement. Another enhancement could be the fact that, you know, maybe the enemy at some point splits, and now there's two of them that we have to capture within a certain amount of time frame. There could also be the notion of levels, where, you know, level 1 would be to capture you know, the enemy within 10 seconds. Level 2 would be, okay, now we have to do it in 8 seconds. And then level 3 could be, you know, 6 seconds, and so on. You know, making it harder with each level. Honestly, the possibilities are endless. It's really up to your imagination as to how you could further enhance this. But hopefully through this video series, you've seen, you know, we can do a lot with just 10 NeoPixels and a speaker. So let's go back to our presentation. And, you know, I've kind of done the review already. So this was Catch the NeoPixel. It was a little game where we moved the NeoPixel around using the left and right buttons, and it was our task to capture the enemy, what did I put down? I think 5 times in order to win. But if we fail to do that within 10 seconds, then we lose. So again, I look forward to seeing maybe some of the things that you create, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. Goodbye.